ADD and ADHD cases are on the rise.
I found story after story about how Red 40 caused ADHD-like symptoms in some kids.
Artificial food dyes are synthetic chemicals that were originally derived from coal tar. Now, most days, they come from petroleum, crude oil.
In the United States, the approval of the amount of dyes that are used in food has quadrupled.
Every year, 15 million pounds of artificial food dye is put into food. They're linked to behavior problems in kids, ADHD, even autism.
It's the mid-1800s, and food was dull. Butter was a pasty white. Oranges were greenish on the outside, and bread was a dusty off-white beige. And people ate it with a smile because they never knew anything different. Food was just food. It was seen as a fuel source and a way to get nutrition. But then, the industrial age hit, and suddenly new snack foods started flooding America. Lay's chips, Tootsie Rolls, Oreos, boxed cereal, soda pop, cheesy poofs, marshmallows, gum. Exciting, fun new snacks that tickled the taste buds of every American. It was like the golden age of processed foods. But as the head of one of these big food companies, you started to get a little nervous. What if people eventually got bored of your snack? What if a better snack comes along that's better than yours? This was a cutthroat business after all. You needed every advantage you could get to make your snacks more attractive and more likely for people to become repeat customers. Obviously, you gotta make them taste good and addictive. You also gotta make sure they smell just right, that they crunch in your mouth just right, that the packaging looks attractive. But what else could you do? That's right. You also gotta make sure the color of your food products is just right. See, color is arguably just as powerful as taste or smell when it comes to food. Think about it. We instantly feel gross when we see the disgusting color of mold on our food. But a bright mango with its beautiful orange hue, or a bright raspberry, just seeing the color without smell can make you salivate. It can make you crave it. It automatically makes you think the food is fresh. And it can make you pick up the box of cereal and buy it. But color goes even deeper than that. A man named Johann Wolfgang von Goethe published a book in 1810 showing how colors can elicit certain emotions. Yellow makes humans feel agreeable and glad. Orange, extreme excitement. Blue, emptiness and coldness. And red, sentiments of awe. So if color is so powerful, why not take color psychology and put it into your food products? Which is where food dyes come in. But not those natural dyes made from turmeric and beet juice. Ugh. Those dyes are okay, but they're not very bright or vibrant, and they fade over time. No, you need something like coal tar dyes, an industrial-grade dye that's made from the murky black liquid that forms from the gas of coal tar processing and is also used in clothing dye. Yeah, that's what you're gonna put in your food. Coal tar dyes are synthetic. They're more concentrated and controlled, which makes for some very bright colors, unlike the natural stuff like turmeric. And none of this is a hidden secret, by the way. It's written on the FDA's website. And so, you dumped that coal tar dye into every food product out there. And then you eventually switched to petroleum-based dyes, like red number 40, yellow number 5, blue number 2, and green number 3. Which is why today in America, these artificial food dyes are in everything. From the obvious stuff like Gatorade, Fruit Loops, to the things that you would never expect to have food dyes, like butter, cheese, and even trail mixes. And the consequences have been disastrous. Artificial food dyes makes ADHD and autism worse. Food dyes are linked to hyperactivity in children, anxiety, depressed growth in babies, cancer, obesity, and God knows what else. But we can't escape it. Nearly half of the products in your grocery store contain artificial dyes, 43%. But as a food giant, even though you know this is the case, even though you do sell safer versions of your food in other countries that ban these dyes, are you gonna stop poisoning people for just a tiny bit more money? Of course not. Food giants like Kellogg's, Frito-Lay's, Nestle, General Mills, Kraft, Heinz, Hershey's, they're not gonna stop.
About 1,000 people protested outside Kellogg's headquarters in Michigan, demanding the company remove artificial dyes from cereals.
You're a public company. which means you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders to make as much money as humanly possible. Which means time to keep shoving food dyes down our kids' throats, unless we all do something about it. Welcome to Evil Food Supply. And this is the infuriating history of food dyes. Artificial food dyes aren't just lurking in almost everything you buy from the grocery store. They're even found in the kibble you give your dog. Yep, even little Snowy isn't safe from that rainbow-colored poison from the food industry. And that's where Sundays for Dogs comes in, today's sponsor. Sundays produces air-dried, human-grade dog food made with real, whole ingredients. Sundays is made with 100% meat muscle, organs, and superfoods. No fillers, no dyes, no sketchy byproducts. There's a reason why your dog hates the kibble from the grocery store. It's because it's basically toxic cardboard. But with Sundays, they've got 3 scrumptious recipes your dog will actually want to eat: beef, chicken, and turkey. Simply customize your dog's meal plan, set a delivery schedule, and it will show up at your door like clockwork. Sundays was founded by dog parents, Dr. Tori, who is a vet, and her husband, which means they really know what dogs and dog parents need. The nutrition of homemade meals with the convenience of dry food. We've personally been feeding our dogs Sundays for a while now, and they love it. And like many of the over 1,700 5-star reviews for Sundays mention, we're noticing softer fur, fresher breath, and just a happier dog overall. It's almost like they're finally getting the nutrition they need. So ditch the dog food packed with fake stuff and switch to something you and your best friend will feel good about. Use code EvilFoodSupply or click the link below to get 50% off your first order. So scroll down and click the link below now.
There's Lucky! He's got Lucky Charms! They're magically delicious!
Always after me Lucky Charms, the frosted oat cereal with sweet surprises. Pink hearts, yellow moons, orange stars, green clovers. Part of your good breakfast. Oh, here they come. I'll make a castle to hide in. Open drawbridge!
Frosted Lucky Charms!
Magically delicious.
So it's the early 1950s, and your whole food dye scheme? Well, it worked. Now, colored food was it. People couldn't wait to try the new zany rainbow cereal or the new shade of Jell-O. And it wasn't just in junk food. You put this dye in everything. You dyed the peel of oranges using a petroleum-based dye called citrus red, which you still do to this day. You put yellow number 5 in pickles, salad dressing, and breads.
It's in pickles.
Oh,
Yeah. It's in pickles. It's in a lot of foods. Some things you wouldn't expect it to be in, it's in. Popcorn, bagels, just bagels from the bakery at the grocery store. So we're not even talking processed, right?
You fed a synthetic dye to salmon to dye its meat red from the inside out. Yes, you really did this, and still do today. You put dyes in lipstick, shampoo, and soap. You even added dye to canned vegetables so it looked fresher, even though it was super old and almost gray without it. Ugh. Yes, this dye was a lifesaver, which you also used it in. Anything you could dye, you did. Because of that oh-so-potent color psychology. When customers set eyes on it, their hearts would start to pound. The neurons in their brains fire all the right signals, and then they would instinctually hand over that sweet, hard-earned cash. It was kinda too easy. And obviously during this time, your profits were going through the roof. Everyone started to prefer your visually flawless, pretty food over any old, dull, graying thing that they could make at home. And the food dye companies? They were benefiting too, of course. They were even selling food dye directly in stores to encourage housewives to get creative in the kitchen. Rainbow-layered Jell-O cakes were a delicacy, and colorful cereal was way better than that boring, dry, shredded wheat. And all of these wonderful, wacky foods were colored with, may we remind you, a clothing dye, made from dirty coal tar runoff. But no one was the wiser. And no one cared? This was the 50s. It's not like they could look up where the food dyes come from. So you continued to lace all your food with dyes. Until one night in 1950, when your whole food dye scheme came crashing down. So you've been coloring your foods, drinks, and cosmetics for a few decades now, and everyone seems okay with it. People are happy and healthy, and even though they're eating a lot of colored foods, no one has literally dropped dead because of it until Halloween night, 1950, USA. Millions of trick-or-treaters across America go door to door and collect a new, interesting orange-tinted candy, colored with a generous dose of orange number 1, a food dye that's known to cause organ damage and premature death in lab animals. Usually, only a tiny amount of this dye would be eaten at once, but this was Halloween night. And when all those innocent little trick-or-treaters got home after their long night out, they devoured handfuls of this new, vibrant orange candy and got seriously sick. Several kids had severe diarrhea, while others got welt-like rashes all over their body as an allergic reaction. There was a huge uproar over it. It spread across the newspapers all over America. It even led to the FDA banning orange number 1 and a bunch of other dyes that they were suspicious of. Or at least, that's what they said they did. Because here's the funny thing about the FDA and banning things, they don't. The FDA technically did ban a bunch of food additives and dyes in 1960 because of the Halloween fiasco, but the terms? The terms are what really matter. Let us explain. The rules were that 200 food additives that were now banned would still be allowed to be used until they were officially terminated from use, which is at the FDA's discretion or there is physical evidence that they cause harm. Okay. So they'll be removed from the food supply only once a human almost dies from it, or whenever the FDA gets around to testing it, which is usually years to decades. Got it. Thanks, FDA, for always looking out for us. So orange number 1 was definitely out the window. That was banned right away because of the whole kids getting diarrhea thing. But the rest of the suspicious dyes like red number 3, red number 40, and yellow number 5 were still allowed to be used until the FDA says no. So food dyes are still fair game. So you kept dripping that $1 million goo into your food, and the people kept eating it with a smile. Until the 90s, when things got even worse.
I started looking for answers. I searched the textbooks, scientific research articles, and I scoured the internet. And I found articles on the artificial food dye Red 40 and how it caused hyperactivity in some children. I found story after story about how Red 40 caused ADHD-like symptoms in some kids. It made them hyper, impulsive, disruptive in class, and caused brain buzzing.
It's the mid-90s, and food dyes are in everything. In the morning, you could have a Pop-Tart, a bowl of cereal, and a quote-unquote healthy berry yogurt, all full of red number 3. You could sit down for lunch and have a salad dressing, lunch meat, and soda full of a bunch of other food dyes. You could sit down for dinner and have barbecue sauce, margarine, and juice, all tainted with, you guessed it, more artificial toxic dye. People were flooding themselves with dye meal after meal, and it was starting to mess with them, especially children. Back in the 60s, when the FDA banned a bunch of food dyes, they set up limitations on how much could be in each food product. And this was based on how much an adult could eat safely without getting sick. Second, the FDA did not consider the increased risk that dyes pose to children, who are both more sensitive to carcinogens and consume more dyes per unit of body weight than adults. But what about the kids? They're the ones eating the most dye, and they're the ones who colored food is marketed to. Children were starting to show signs of food dyes poisoning, and their parents were noticing the effects.
7 months after the removal of Red 40, we have a new problem. He's having emotional meltdowns and temper tantrums, the likes of which I had never seen. He would get upset over the littlest things. These temper tantrums turned into, they got more intense and more frequent. I'd ask him to turn off the TV and he would break down and cry. And the crying would turn into anger, and this anger would turn into a full-blown emotional fit. He would scratch at himself. He would shred at his clothes. He would swing on me. He would scream. And eventually it would lead to him begging, "Mom, just get me a knife so I just want to die." We couldn't believe it. We had a 7-year-old. And all I can think of was if this continued, by the time he hit puberty, we would lose him. We were wondering what was happening to our sweet boy. So I searched the textbooks, the articles, the internet. I searched and searched. And I found one article on yellow 5 and how it caused irritation in kids. I found more articles and anecdotal evidence of other dyes like yellow 5 and 6 causing emotional disruptions in children. So we thought, all right, that's it. No more artificially colored food.
And here's the truly horrifying part. Artificial food dyes have tons of contaminants, like heavy metals, benzodiene, and formaldehyde that comes from the raw petroleum they're processed from. Because petroleum isn't exactly a clean product. The FDA tests for these contaminants, but only the unbound ones, meaning the contaminants that are floating as their own molecules in the dye, not the contaminants that are bound up in other molecules, which is actually way more common to find in food dyes than you would think. And this is how dyes that were almost banned back in the 60s are still being fed to us. It's all because of this lazy testing process. Oh, and here's another thing about the heavy metals found in food dyes like lead, mercury, and arsenic. They are linked to the symptoms of ADHD, autism, and learning disabilities. Oh, and look at that! Food dyes also cause these symptoms. Cases of autism skyrocketed in California in the 1980s, and this was also when food dye consumption really started to take off.
Each dye affects him differently. Red makes him hyper, gives him migraines, and causes brain buzzing. The behaviors resemble ADHD, and the effects last about 2 days. Green makes him manic, hyper, and euphoric. The behaviors resemble bipolar disorder in a manic phase, and the effects last less than a day. Blue makes him tired, moody, and grumpy. There's no disorder for that yet. But the effects last about a day. Yellow is sneakier. Yellow intensifies emotions, increases anxiety, increases agitation, aggravation, and defiance, leading to violent outbursts and thoughts of. The behaviors resemble oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. And the effects last 5 days.
And it's not just mental disorders. One study showed that 94% of mice who were fed red number 3 developed tumors on their thyroids. And yellow number 6 was shown to cause severe eye inflammation and cancer in animal subjects. These dyes destroy the body and the mind. But as the CEO of a mega snack food empire, you don't really care that your food dyes are full of cancer-causing contaminants. You don't care that it's killed countless animals in scientific studies. And you definitely don't care that the heavy metals in your dye are linked to higher rates of autism, ADHD, and in children.
I had a doctor tell me once that he wonders just how many kids are on medications when in fact they're having a reaction to artificial food dyes. Ironically, most medications for behavioral problems contain artificial food dyes.
How much can you really bring to light, and what are we going to learn about our food system? I mean, even Canada, if you could, one of the things about the hearings that they just had was they were comparing Lucky Charms that they sell in the United States that are very brightly colored versus Lucky Charms that they sell in Canada. Completely different looking product, because in Canada, it's illegal to use those dyes that we use ubiquitously. And those dyes are terrible for you. And we know they're terrible for you. And Canada knows they're terrible for you, which is why they're illegal up there. The food tastes the same.
It's the year 2008, and your poison drip is drying up. Word is getting around about how eating clothing dye made from gasoline sludge is actually bad for you, and that food dyes can cause behavior disorders in children and, yes, even cancer. People were reading the studies. Articles were being published online. And by 2009, the British government advised all their food manufacturers to remove artificial food dyes. The ones who kept it in would have to put a big warning label on their food packages. And it only got worse from there. European countries from all over started banning your beloved red number 40, yellow number 5, titanium dioxide, and more. Even Canada limited the amount of artificial colors you could put in your food products, giving you no choice but to replace them with those bland, ugly, natural dyes, like turmeric, paprika, and beet juice. Ugh. There was nothing else you could do. The literal British government made a law against you. So you quickly reformulated your recipes and swapped out your artificial dyes for safe, natural ones. But America had not banned these dyes yet. But if you didn't do something fast, America would probably be next. Needless to say, something had to be done. To make sure the poison dye stays in your foods, you're gonna need to game the system. You're gonna need to work with these pesky scientists and journalists who keep trying to call you out. And here's how you'll do it. Arrange and fund your own scientific studies that test your food dyes. But since it's your studies, you get to, theoretically, cut all of the corners you want. You're gonna arrange for the study to be shorter than normal, 2 years or less. You're also not gonna do any in utero studies, because you don't want people to get too maniacal if they know your dye is hurting babies. So you'll keep it to adult animals only. And you can do all of this because you're the one paying the scientists. They don't want to play ball? Guess they have to find another job. And when you get the final results, even if it says the food dye is dangerous, it's still inconclusive because, whoops, the study wasn't long enough. Or, whoops, there wasn't enough data to come to a definitive conclusion. So whose fault was it? The scientists or you? Then you gotta infiltrate the FDA. Theoretically, of course. How, you ask? You offer members of the FDA honorariums, giant wads of money, in exchange for their advice on a product or as a travel fee to meet you at your headquarters. Between the years of 2013 and 2016, the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca gave an FDA board member, who is also a cardiologist, $200,000 for travel fees and for his professional advice. $200,000 is kind of a lot of money. And don't you think that after getting such a huge amount of money, bribe, this FDA member is going to prefer your product over others? Don't you think that when it comes time to approve the product, they'll have a higher likelihood of supporting it? Because remember, the FDA doesn't have the time and money to ban every single poisonous food or drug out there. But they do have the time to travel on a $200,000 honorarium.
So what's the problem? The problem is in 1992, we decided we're not going to fund the FDA with tax dollars and keep them objective and independent and representing the American people and looking out for their goodwill. No, we're going to mandate that the FDA gets funded in large part by the drug companies themselves. So now the people who are supposed to be regulating the drug companies are funded by the drug companies, which sets up a massive conflict of interest, which means that oftentimes you're going to look the other way as they put out questionable products, and in many cases just flat out bad products.
And when that doesn't work, then you also gotta bribe, lobby the politicians as well. Like how the government ruled against the FDA banning red number 3 because canned fruit companies needed it. Whatever that means. That's why today, the FDA still allows the artificial food dyes in the US. And with these blues, greens, reds, and yellows, we can make any color under the rainbow. This is why our junk food looks so much more bright and vibrant in America than in backwards Europe. Like these Fruit Loops, or these M&Ms. Look at how much duller M&Ms look in Europe compared to America. The European mind could never comprehend. But wait, it gets worse. These are just the dyes that are allowed in food. The dyes they allow in our personal care products are even worse. Take orange number 4, for example. An artificial color they use in cologne and bar soap. It's literally been shown to cause cancer in animal studies. Or how they use Red 27. It's banned for use in food, causes skin irritation, can be absorbed into the skin, and yet it's used in lipstick.
I think lipstick looks fake. No one's lips are that color.
Because you definitely want to be sucking and licking on that all day. How do you make these makeup products that have these bright, vibrant colors? It's from the dangerous amounts of these toxic dyes. And men are far from immune. Those neon blue body washes, bright colored soaps, moisturizers, and lotions, all these common name brand products all have artificial dyes in them. So when you're rubbing yourself with soap or putting eyeshadow on the delicate skin of your eyelids, your skin can absorb many of those chemicals, including the dyes. One study showed that dyes can be absorbed into the bloodstream through a mucous membrane or damaged skin. So we're talking lips, eyes, nose, by sniffing in perfume, freshly shaved skin, and let's just say, other regions?
They're my keys, you perv.
Which is part of the reason why we created Evil Goods Whipped Tallow Honey Balm, our super viral all-natural moisturizer with no harmful ingredients, now available in natural citrus scent, with the link below. But luckily, it looks like people are finally starting to wake up to these crimes.
More than 1,000 protesters rallied in front of Kellogg's headquarters in Michigan, demanding that the cereal company remove what they call harmful additives from their breakfast products.
Hundreds of parents, kids, and wellness leaders gathered for a Michigan rally before activists marched and delivered boxes of petitions to Kellogg Corporation with what they say contains over 400,000 signatures demanding Kellogg remove artificial food dyes and a preservative called BHT from kids' cereals.
All of the cereals that they have targeting children have these artificial food dyes, but they don't do this in other countries. It's un-American, it's unethical, it's immoral.
We're finally seeing through the veil, and Kellogg's is starting to feel the heat. But we can't stop with just Kellogg's. If we want things to change, and if we want to be healthier, all of us have to take a second to look at the ingredient labels we're buying. And if it contains any of those artificial food dyes, we gotta put it down and buy something else. And what you're quickly gonna realize is that, unfortunately, seemingly everything has artificial dyes in it. From trail mixes to basic sauces like mayonnaise, to pickles, to applesauce, to yogurt, to cheese products, to medications like cough syrup, to all these personal care and household products. Which is why the easiest route is to just stick with natural whole foods. And the great thing is that once you get off of these ultra-processed foods and you only eat real food, these fake foods no longer taste good. They're no longer attractive to you, and not eating them becomes effortless. And for personal care products, find non-toxic alternatives to everyday stuff you use. We got Evil Goods to replace moisturizers and face creams. We've got that new yummy citrus scent using only quality essential oils that we'll link below. And we're working on a lot of other products that are dropping soon. And there are other brands that have non-toxic alternatives to the other products you need, like detergents. But even then, not all natural, organic foods are safe. For example, fair trade chocolate bars may be natural, but they also have a ton of toxic chemicals in them, and these chemicals aren't even listed on the label. They are a byproduct of the manufacturing process. And there are many of these natural, organic foods out there that are hiding these byproduct chemicals. We can't go through it all here, but our most recent newsletter goes into the horrifying truth behind organic fair trade chocolate. If you want to know what kind of toxic chemicals are lurking in your favorite chocolate bars, then make sure to subscribe to our Evil Food Insiders newsletter by clicking the card on the screen now. This newsletter is where we update you on breaking news about our food supply, just like this, way faster than we can make a video on. So to get our newest email with a complete list of chocolate brands to avoid, click the card on the screen.